What's up, Cats fans? Paul here from the Hoops crew, and it is reaction time to our round 20 win against the North Melbourne Football Club. It's the second time we've dealt with the Roos this year, and we got the chocolates yet again, this time to the margin of 40 points. The Cats, as we can see, as I project the scores now, got up 10-6-66 to North Melbourne. Geelong 16-10, 106, a comfortable 40-point win. There was a period during the first quarter where things were a little bit concerning. But to the great credit of the players and the coaching staff, they adapted very quickly to the style of game North Melbourne was opting to play against the Cats, old Northball. And things worked out pretty well for us. So as I quickly scroll through and bring up the worm to kind of, I guess, highlight what I was saying there, North kind of controlled things for the first 15 minutes or so of the match, and things were looking a little bit dicey for a little while there. I was a bit worried until Ollie Dempsey got his first, Tyson Stengel got going, and then things kind of built from there. You can see we kind of gained the lead by quarter time, lost it very briefly in the early stage of the second, and then there was no looking back from that particular point. A couple of later goals to North Melbourne in the final term brought the margin back under the 50 points that we were basically teasing for a good chunk of the final stages of the match. And a pretty respectable win for the Cats. I'm sure there's certain areas that the coaching staff are going to want to analyse and critique and work on over the course of the week. But I think overall it was a relatively complete performance. Again, as I said, massive credit to both players and coaching staff for identifying the way North Melbourne was trying to play, what was absolutely working for them in those first 15 minutes, the very forward handball sort of focus they brought to the game, and looking to counteract that themselves, change their style of game a little bit to kind of block that run, to obscure that run, and also to recognize that by playing a game like that, it is high risk. And so to position yourself in such a way that you can sweat on the opponent, await what is going to be, in some cases, an inevitable mistake, unless it's Harry Sheezel with the ball, who just doesn't seem to miss the target. He missed a couple, but identify the way North are going to be playing and counteract that. It was a brilliant piece of coaching and execution by the players. Massive credit to the Cats, considering last week we were talking about some coaching blunders, some match committee blunders. Everything was nailed this week. We did, of course, go into the game, I think, as supporters, expecting Geelong to get the win, because we should really when we're playing against the North Melbourne team, who's second last on the ladder and has been, absolutely improving and has shown lots of signs over the course of the year. Hell, they didn't disgrace themselves against us earlier in the year as well. But there's a gap in class, there's a gap in experience between the two teams, and we should have gotten the win. And I think the 40 points about summarizes the game, really. We had 10 more scoring shots than North. They certainly took advantage of their opportunities, but we deserved to get the win, and we did. So let's move over to some team stats before we focus on some individual efforts from some of the players. Again, and kind of reflective of the style of game North were looking to play today, it was a high possession game. It was a handball-heavy game. The stats really reflect that. The Cats took control where it counted and had those inside 50s as you'd expect. Disposal efficiency, about the same for either team, but certainly for the Cats, up on our season average, which is fantastic to see. Our efficiency inside 50, something that was such a strength for us in those first 7 games, and certainly that block of 3 more recently before the loss against the Dogs last week. We found that again, and I think Shannon Neal had a big part to play in that. Just being another tall focus allowed Jeremy Cameron to kind of do his thing. He's still a little bit out of sorts. He spoke during the week and described last week's game against the Dogs as being one of the worst games of his career. I highly agree. Maybe with the exception of some games in his first season for the Giants. So, that game was probably right up there with the absolute worst game of football he's ever played. He was still a little bit off the boil at points, but you could see signs he was starting to pick it back up again, and he was chasing the ball a little bit just to help. I hope he doesn't kind of get back to that floating up the ground sort of style, because certainly as he went deeper forward with that block of 3 wins recently, that's when things kind of turned around for him and the club. Hopefully he's back up there soon, but maybe he needed a game like this to just go and chase the ball and find some touch again. Hopefully that's worked out and it works out well for us next week against the Crows. But as I said, the efficiency inside 50 was great. Another week where we've come on top with the free kicks. Don't even know what to say at this point. Thanks, umpires. But honestly, no, I think a lot of that came from, and I think both teams kind of wore the wrath of the umpires at different points and also benefited from some inconsistency with the umpires at different points when it came to holding the man, holding the ball. There seemed to be a lot of inconsistency between the different umpires around the ground today. And so sometimes I felt like it just depended on where that particular scenario played out as to what umpire you got, as to what decision they would make. Geelong came out on top in this particular instance, but it didn't really influence the game one way or the other. Clearances was certainly a point of interest for me. Normally, we kind of get smacked around a little bit when it comes to centre clearances and then offset that when it comes to clearances around the ground, the normal stoppage clearances. This week, it was reversed. This week, we broke even and lost around the stoppage clearances. Not necessarily the best of signs, but again, those North midfielders, they might be young, they might be inexperienced, but they've got a lot of class, they've got a lot of talent, and Tristan Sherry is a brilliant ruckman. I was sitting there watching the game with my uncle today, who's a hardcore Carlton supporter, but he was very quick to say, look, I think this bloke should be in consideration for Australian ruckman. Now, I haven't followed Tristan Sherry's year too much. All I know is he's been causing a bit of chaos when it comes to injuries for opposition players of late. But I'm going to have to do a little bit of digging and see if there's potentially some validity to his argument, because I can't think of any ruckman who's kind of consistently delivered all season, but maybe Tristan's one of those. And because he's been playing for North, it's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. But he played a great game today, set up his midfielders quite well, got himself a bit of the ball as well. It was a good effort from him. Hence also the hit out discrepancy. Everything from here really kind of reflects what I was talking about before in terms of the style of game that North Melbourne was playing. Again, it was high disposal. So, there was going to be some contested. They're playing fast football. They're bashing straight through at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And certainly they won their share of the contested ball, but it got a lot of uncontested ball. But they also, as I said before, Geelong was kind of preying on the turnovers, and they came. Geelong very much in line with their season average, North above their season average. Geelong put the pressure on them where it counted, and there was a lot of intercept possessions deep inside forward 50 because they were rushed kicks. There was handballs that were forced to miss targets. Geelong players position using body very, very well to knock players off the ball, resulting in the turnover and the rush up the other end of the ground. It was very, very well done. From there, get like marking numbers, we were playing a little bit more stop and start, a bit more methodical, a bit more old school Geelong. It worked again today. Marks inside 50 were good. We did give away a few opportunities to North that were a little bit disappointing in that regard, but didn't come back to hurt us too much. Tackling pretty equal, but Geelong's intensity was right there. North were chasing tail all day, hence their numbers being up. Geelong's intensity right up from probably that 10-minute mark when they kind of cottoned onto, hang on, we've got to do something about this. That was great to see as well. Tackles inside 50 especially were fantastic. The defensive pressure from our forwards, whether it was Tyson Stengel, whether it was Brian Myers, whether it was Brad Close, anyone else that kind of wandered through there was fantastic. Shannon Neal, I'll give a big credit to there as well. Used his body very, very well. And from there, interchange, let's not make too much of that. Sam de Koning was out there and got finished his day a little bit early. Gary Rowan's got the concussion in a very, very, sending my best to Gary, a very Gary Rowan style concussion where he's just going at 1,000,000 miles an hour and cracked heads. I can't believe the other bloke was still standing or didn't have a broken jaw at the speed that Gary was coming at him. That, to me, is a miracle in and of itself. But Gary's got a bit of a sore head and is likely to be out next week. Moving on to some player numbers with the disclosure there, of course, of what has occurred to Gary Rowan and to Sam de Koning. Let's move to some disposal figures here. Tom Stewart, game high for the Cats. I don't know if it was game high for the match. No, Harry Sheasel and Tom Powell topped him there. But for the Cats, Tom Stewart doing what Tom Stewart does, absolutely lighting it up from only 76% of game time. That's incredible, Tom Stewart. Max Holmes then next, quite a drop-off in terms of numbers, but it was very much a team effort today. The numbers really, really reflect that as well. I don't think we really had any passengers over the course of the day. You can see, the deeper we go, it's a nice spread. Ted Closey coming in kind of later in the piece, obviously a little bit lower. Gary Rowan, his game being cut short with just 41% game time. Obviously some reasons there. But otherwise, it was very well spread amongst the team. It was awesome to see. Defensive pressure, as I touched on before, was great. The tackle numbers looked awesome. Leading the charge there, of course, have been some of the more familiar faces: Brian Myers, Jed Bews, Sean Manor. Didn't necessarily get as many, but his pressure around the ball was fantastic. We brought the defensive heat, which then allowed us to turn that ball over and launch the ball forward. It was awesome to see. I love seeing that sort of pressure. It's exactly what we're going to need if we want to go deep into September. If we want to pull out what might be argued as a surprise premiership, we're going to need to deliver in all of those facets of the game, and we delivered those today. I touched on the marking figures. Obviously, it was a little bit more stop-start, but some great efforts. And I want to shout out Jack Henry. I have been critical at different points over the course of the season, but he was strong when we needed him to be. Had the advantage this week of not dealing with like a Sam Darcy and a 16-centimetre height differential. That made a bit of a difference, but he was really important defensively as well with some of those intercept marks. Tom Stewart doing the same. Jeremy Cameron, as we can see, got his hands on the ball a little bit more. 19 disposals, 8 marks, had his two goals, 2 goals, 2. It was good to see from him. We're getting there. Other players around the ground were just clean. It was great to see Brian Myers getting his hands on the ball again, but he delivered it well to his teammates. Shame he didn't get a goal late in the piece. Brilliant play there that just hit the post, if I recall. Mitch Duncan looking good. I want to take a moment to celebrate my mate Jed Bews, who had a fantastic game, I think, for the Cats. I spoke about in a video that went live on Friday how I was very much hoping that he could retain his spot going forward. He's been out of the team all season, but I think he can play a really important part late in the season when we're dealing with the likes of a Charlie Cameron, for example, who's got this explosive speed, but intense creative flair. And we need someone who's got that same sort of speed, but incredible lockdown prowess. And Jed Bews fits that bill. He did an amazing job today. It was awesome to see. And he also was able to inject a bit of speed on the ball going the opposite direction for the Cats. So it was great to have him back in the team. And I think he put in a great effort. Let me flick back to our disposal figures. Tanner Bruin building his way back into it again, just from 62% game time. I did kind of notice on a few occasions, I feel like it's been a while since Tanner Bruin's kind of featured in the game, but the 62% game time kind of highlights that, yeah, he was riding the bench a little bit as he builds himself back up again. So I'm pretty happy with those figures. Again, very much the team effort from the Cats today. It was awesome to see. They're building nicely. Now we've got 4 games to go. We're playing against Adelaide. We've got Freo over there, which will be probably the toughest game of our final month of the home and away season. We've then got St Kilda at Marvel, which, I mean, we've seen what they've done to Essendon. That's no easy feat, I'm sure. And we finished the game, the season with West Coast at GMHBA. So we're positioning ourselves, if we want to think about the ladder, we're positioning ourselves quite well to make an assault on the finals, to make an assault on the top 4. We just can't afford any Bulldog-style slip-ups. And we need to refine some of the little aspects of our game that still need a little bit of work. Tom Hawkins is to come back in the team in the next few weeks, presumably. That's going to throw a curveball in the mix. Shannon Neal has absolutely been doing an amazing job so far, and I don't necessarily want to see him leave the team. So how do we make that dynamic work? Gary Rowan's obviously got the week off now, but he's going to be back soon enough. His speed is really important. Ollie Henry was flying for him today and should have clunked 1 or 2 of them. He was looking great, though. There was lots of positives from a lot of players today, and there's a lot of pressure. I mean, Tom Atkins has got to come back. Zach Tui's got to come back. Tom Hawkins, as I said, has got to come back. Do we look at bringing a full-time ruckman in? Does Rhys Stanley come back into the team? There's a lot of questions to be asked here of the match committee, dependent on the teams that we're playing going forward, and it's going to be a really, really fascinating one to see which way they go. I'll leave that to them to make some decisions, because there's some really hard decisions. But the decision-making around this week's game with North Melbourne, right on the money, and the players executed everything wonderfully well. Cats fans, I hope you're happy with how things worked out this week. I certainly am. If there's any areas for improvement, let me know in the comments what you're thinking, who played well, who maybe needs to step it up in a few different areas. Let's keep things positive, though, because it was a great win today. 40 points is a great margin. And against a team who's absolutely building in the right direction. Until next time, though, check out, if you haven't already done so, go check out the replay of Post-Game Live with Ben. I'll see if I can pop in for a little bit with that. There's a whole range of cool stuff that we've got going on. The Chaps Chat Cats do all their podcasts every week. Go check out all of those on podcast feeds and the YouTube channel. Check out our Patreon, where you can subscribe. You can get 7 days of free and exclusive access to see if it's for you, and then consider sticking around from there at either the $5 or $6 tiers. There's lots of cool content there. The Scratching Post is my 1 to 2 to 3 times a week, sort of camera rant while I'm driving to and from work on different occasions. There's lots of cool things going on there. Lots of exclusives on the Patreon, so go check all that out. We've got our socials. Go check out the Hoops Crew on socials. You can find me at Paul James Games on social media as well. Check me out there. Reach out. Let me know if you've got questions, comments, concerns. Want to chat about footy? Want to talk about footy video games, footy bash? There's a whole range of cool things. Go check all of it out. Until next time, Cats fans, remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later. Go Cats.